Something vast lies beneath the Nullarbor. Not rock, not salt, not the slow dissolution of limestone that geologists have mapped for decades. Something older, something that does not fit the story we have been told about this continent. The Nullarbor Plain stretches across 2,000 kilometres of southern Australia, one of the largest single pieces of exposed limestone on Earth. Above ground, it appears to be nothing, flat, featureless, a place you drive through to get somewhere else. Most Australians have crossed it once, fewer still have looked down. Beneath that blinding white surface, cave systems run for hundreds of kilometres in total darkness. Some have been mapped, others have not. And inside the ones that have been sealed or quietly closed to the public, something has been discovered that Australian authorities have chosen not to discuss. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documentation of what we know, what has been found, what has been sealed, and what questions remain without a satisfactory official answer. Over the past 40 years, researchers, cavers, and independent archaeologists have catalogued anomalies beneath the Nullarbor that cannot be explained by natural geological processes alone. 12 of those sites stand out. 12 locations where evidence of something ancient, deliberate, and structurally precise was found, reported, and quietly removed from public access. Today we examine all 12. Without false comfort, we ask the questions that have never received a straight answer. Now, let us begin. Koonalda Cave, the engravings that should not exist. Koonalda Cave sits in the eastern Nullarbor, roughly 20 kilometres south of the highway. It was first formally investigated by archaeologist Alexander Gallus in 1956. What he found was not what anyone expected. Carved into the walls at depths requiring rope access and artificial light were geometric patterns. Not the organic handprints or animal figures associated with traditional Australian rock art. These were precise, parallel lines running for metres at a time, grid formations, spiral sequences maintaining consistent spacing across entire wall sections, as though executed with tools that should not have existed at the time. Gallus dated the engravings to approximately 22,000 years before the present. That figure has been contested by subsequent researchers using more refined dating methods. 6 decades of challenge have not undermined that precision. In 1974, after further excavation revealed a lower chamber containing stone arrangements that appeared deliberate in their layout, Koonalda was closed to the public. The official reason cited conservation. Visitor breath was damaging the art through carbon dioxide exposure. That explanation is reasonable on its surface, but the lower chamber discoveries were never fully published. Access now requires approval from multiple government bodies simultaneously. Gallus described the stone formations in his unpublished field notes as architecturally intentional. Those notes are held at the South Australian Museum. They are not available to general researchers. Cockalbiddy Cave, what the divers found at the end of the world. Cockalbiddy Cave holds the record for one of the longest underwater cave passages ever explored. The system runs beneath the Nullarbor for more than 6 kilometres of submerged tunnel before reaching air pockets deep inside the plain. French teams explored the system across 3 expeditions through the 1980s and 1990s, setting world records for cave diving distance. They also found something in the deepest air pocket that never appeared in the official expedition reports. The official reports describe geological formations, fossil deposits, and water chemistry data. What is absent from the public versions is a section of tunnel wall, approximately 5 kilometres from the entrance, where the limestone shows evidence of cutting, not erosion, not natural fracture, cutting. The marks run at a consistent depth for approximately 4 metres along one wall. One of the French divers, speaking to a researcher in 2003, described the marks as consistent with tool use. He said this clearly and then declined to say anything further. The marks exist in a section of cave accessible only during periods of significantly lower sea levels, placing potential human contact at this location somewhere between 12,000 and 20,000 years ago. The team's full dive logs were submitted to Australian authorities. The public version of their findings contains no reference to the cutting marks. Murrawijinie Cave, the system that was mapped and then unmapped. Murrawijinie Cave, near Eucla on the Western Australian border, was partially explored by the Cave Exploration Group of South Australia in the 1970s. Their survey data indicated a network of passages extending significantly further than the accessible entrance sections suggest. Published preliminary findings described a horizontal passage, 3 meters wide and 2 meters high, extending northwest from the main chamber. The walls of this passage showed none of the irregular texture characteristic of natural limestone dissolution. They were smooth, uniformly smooth, in a way the cavers noted with evident uncertainty about what they were seeing. Subsequent teams who attempted to follow up reported the passage was no longer accessible. A roof collapse was cited. No collapse was recorded in available survey data, and the local geology does not indicate the kind of instability that produces sudden passage closures at that scale. The original survey map has not appeared in any public caving publication since 1981. The Cave Exploration Group's archive was partially transferred to the South Australian Museum in 1994. The Murrawijinie survey materials were not included in that transfer. This is not direct proof of concealment, but it is a pattern that repeats across every site on this list. Survey data disappears. Access is restricted. Questions go unanswered. The Mundrabilla Formation. When the impact left something behind. The Mundrabilla meteorite field sits on the eastern Nullarbor, known primarily as the source of one of the largest iron meteorites ever recovered in Australia. What receives considerably less attention is what geophysical surveys of the impact crater area revealed in the early 2000s. Ground-penetrating radar surveys, conducted as part of a broader geological study, returned anomalous readings approximately 12 kilometres south of Mundrabilla Station. The readings indicated subsurface voids at depths between 15 and 40 metres. The shape of those voids, reconstructed from the radar data, was not consistent with natural cave formation. Natural caves in limestone are irregular, branching, responsive to the rock structure around them. The voids indicated by the Mundrabilla data were rectilinear. They had corners. A structural engineer, shown the radar output without context, described the pattern as consistent with constructed chambers. The survey was conducted by a university geology department. The published paper discussed water table data and limestone porosity. The anomalous void readings were mentioned in a single sentence as requiring further investigation. No further published investigation followed. Requests to the university for the raw radar data have been met with responses indicating the original files were not retained after publication. In the digital era, with standard institutional storage requirements, that explanation has not satisfied the researchers who pursued it. Cook, the ghost town, with something underneath it. Cook is one of the most famous ghost towns in Australia, largely abandoned in the 1990s when the Indian Pacific was converted to longer locomotives, requiring less maintenance. What Cook left above ground is well documented. Streets of empty houses, a hospital with equipment still inside, a school, a swimming pool that held water for years. What Cook left underground is less discussed. During construction and maintenance of the town's infrastructure between the 1920s and 1960s, workers reported encountering pre-existing tunnel structures during excavation. These encounters were documented in railway maintenance records recovered from the National Archives of Australia. The records describe stone-lined passages encountered during the sinking of service shafts, running north to south, noted as obstructions to planned work. In at least 2 documented cases, the passages were infilled with concrete rather than investigated or reported to any heritage authority. The lining material was described as shaped stone, not naturally occurring rock found in the surrounding area. The railway company's correspondence treats the passages as an inconvenient anomaly and instructs continued construction without examination. Nobody mapped those passages before they were sealed. Rawlinna, the station manager's report that was never followed up. Rawlinna is a sheep station on the central Nullarbor, one of the largest pastoral properties in Australia. In 1987, the station manager submitted a report to the Western Australian Museum describing features discovered during a fencing project in the property's northern section. The report described stone arrangements encountered approximately half a metre below the surface, exposed when post holes were excavated by machinery. The arrangements covered an area of approximately 20 metres by 15 metres. The stones were of a type not naturally occurring in the area and had been placed in a pattern attributable to no natural process. The Western Australian Museum sent a field officer to assess the site. That officer's report noted the stones appeared deliberately arranged and recommended a formal archaeological survey. That survey was never conducted. The recommendation sat in museum files for 3 years before being formally declined due to insufficient funding. The station manager's report and the field officer's assessment are held in the museum archive, accessible under Freedom of Information provisions, which is the only reason they came to light at all. The stone arrangement was covered over when fencing resumed. Nobody photographed it, nobody measured it. The only records are 2 written descriptions in reports nearly lost in a filing system nobody was monitoring. Forrest. What the RAAF survey revealed, and why it was classified. Forrest is a tiny settlement on the Nullarbor, home to a small airstrip used as an emergency landing point on the transcontinental route. During the Second World War, the Royal Australian Air Force expanded and surveyed the Forrest airstrip as part of the Southern Continental Defence Network. Documentation was classified. What was found went into files, not reviewed for decades. RAAF survey teams, conducting subsurface assessments in 1943, recorded the discovery of a stone structure approximately 8 metres below the surface at the northern end of the proposed runway extension. The discovery was classified under wartime secrecy provisions, not reviewed until 1998, when a batch of RAAF wartime documents was released through a routine archive declassification. The report describes a stone vault with an intact ceiling, accessible via a vertical shaft that had partially collapsed. The surveyors noted the vault contained geometric markings on 3 walls and a floor surface that appeared to have been finished smooth by deliberate means. The wartime context meant no archaeological expertise was applied. The shaft was classified as a hazard. The structure was mapped with a basic sketch diagram, and the runway extension was adjusted to avoid the location. That sketch diagram is in the declassified file and accessible to anyone who requests it. The site has never been formally excavated. The area above the vault is now active tarmac. The structure documented in 1943 sits beneath a working runway, undisturbed. Eucla. The telegraph lines and the passage they should not have found. Eucla sits near the Western Australian and South Australian border. The ruins of the old telegraph station, half buried by advancing sand dunes, are among the most photographed heritage sites in outback Australia. Tourists walk through the crumbling walls. Nobody looks beneath them. What telegraph workers found when laying the original cable line in the 1870s is documented in correspondence between the telegraph station superintendent and the Colonial Office in Adelaide, held in the State Records of South Australia. The letters document the discovery of a stone-lined passage during cable trench excavation, approximately 3 kilometres east of the station site. The passage ran perpendicular to the trench line, with walls of dressed stone and insufficient height for an adult without ducking. The superintendent requested guidance on how to handle the discovery. The Colonial Office response, also on file, instructs the superintendent to complete the cable work and note the location for future investigation. Future investigation never came. The passage was covered over. The correspondence remained in the archive, unsearched, until a historian researching telegraph construction history found it in 2011. The location described places the passage in an area now crossed by the air highway. Whether the passage survives beneath the road surface is unknown. No ground-penetrating radar survey of the relevant section has ever been conducted. The water table anomalies, structures that should not survive at that depth. In 2006, a hydrological survey of the Nullarbor groundwater system produced data that has received almost no public attention, despite its implications. The survey, conducted by researchers from 2 Australian universities in partnership with the Bureau of Meteorology, was mapping the underground water table to assess long-term water availability for pastoral use. At 3 separate locations across the central Nullarbor, bore data indicated the presence of dense, non-porous material at depths between 60 and 90 metres. The material registered differently from surrounding limestone on every measurement instrument. It was denser, less porous, and at 2 of the 3 locations, it formed shapes that the hydrologists described in internal notes as geometrically anomalous. The published report discussed water table depth, recharge rates, and mineral content. The anomalous readings were summarised in 2 sentences as possible dense limestone intrusions requiring further geological analysis. One of the hydrologists was contacted by a researcher in 2014 and asked directly about those readings. The hydrologist confirmed they were unusual. When the matter was raised within the supervising institution, they were informed the anomalies were outside the scope of project funding and would not be followed up. 3 structures, 60 to 90 metres down, no further data released. Madura, the cave section that heritage law cannot explain. Madura Pass is one of the few places where the Nullarbor's flat surface breaks dramatically, dropping toward the coastal plain in limestone escarpments, exposing the deep structure of the plain. Below the pass, cave systems open into the rock. One of those systems contains a sealed section that presents an unresolved legal puzzle. The section was sealed under Western Australian heritage legislation in 1992, citing the presence of significant cultural heritage material. That is the entirety of the public justification. Heritage sealing orders under Western Australian law are required to identify the nature of the heritage being protected. The Madura order does not do this. It identifies the location, establishes restricted access with significant penalties for violation, and does not describe what is being protected or why it must be withheld. Freedom of information requests for the underlying assessment have been partially successful. Released documents indicate the section contains stone structures. The specific nature of those structures is redacted in every released version under provisions designed to protect heritage sites from deliberate damage. Those provisions are typically used to withhold rock art locations from vandals, not to redact the heritage type at an already sealed, inaccessible site. The Madura Cave sealed section covers approximately 400 square metres. It has been inaccessible for more than 30 years. Australian heritage law is protecting it while telling us almost nothing about why. Hampton Tablelands, the grid that satellite imaging cannot explain. Satellite imaging of the Hampton Tablelands area on the western edge of the Nullarbor has produced anomalies in subsurface thermal data that geological literature has acknowledged without resolving. The thermal imaging data, derived from satellite surveys conducted between 2009 and 2014, shows a regular grid pattern in subsurface thermal signatures across an area of approximately 40 square kilometres. The pattern is invisible from the surface. From the ground, the Hampton Tablelands look identical to every other section of the plain: flat, white, featureless. From thermal satellite imaging, the subsurface structure of that 40 square kilometre area looks like a grid, evenly spaced, consistent in dimension, oriented precisely to the cardinal points of the compass. Natural geological processes do not produce cardinal point-oriented grids across 40 square kilometres of uniform limestone plain. The geological literature attributes the anomaly to differential erosion patterns. That explanation partially accounts for why some limestone retains heat differently. It does not account for the regular spacing. It does not account for the cardinal orientation. No ground survey of the Hampton Tablelands thermal anomaly has been published. The satellite data is available through commercial providers and visible to anyone with access to the relevant platform. The explanation offered in the literature is insufficient for what the data shows. The Bight Cliffs, the structures emerging from the sea. The Great Australian Bight Cliffs form the southern edge of the Nullarbor, dropping 90 metres straight into the Southern Ocean in sheer white faces, stretching for hundreds of kilometres. They are among the most dramatic coastal formations in Australia. They are also, in several locations, accessible only by boat at low tide, showing something that marine archaeologists have begun examining with growing interest. At the cliff base, in 3 documented locations, stone formations are visible that do not match the natural limestone stratigraphy of the cliffs above. The formations are darker in colour, denser, and shaped in ways that natural erosion cannot account for. Erosion rounds things, smooths things, breaks material along natural fracture lines. What is visible at these cliff bases does not look eroded, it looks cut. Marine archaeological research on submerged Australian landscapes has identified the Bight as an area of significant pre-inundation interest. The continental shelf, south of the Nullarbor, was dry land during the last ice age. People lived on it, they built things, and when sea levels rose, whatever they built went under the Southern Ocean. What is visible at the Bight cliff bases may be the upper sections of structures extending beneath the current sea surface, emerging as the cliffs erode around them. No formal excavation has been conducted. The remoteness, the violence of the Southern Ocean swell, and multiple heritage permitting requirements have kept the sites uninvestigated. They are not sealed. They are simply unreachable, and the sea continues to expose them, 1 meter of cliff face at a time, with nobody watching. What we know, what we do not, and what we should be asking. 12 sites, 12 sets of evidence, 12 instances where something anomalous was found, reported, and moved beyond public reach. None of this constitutes proof of a single conclusion. What it does constitute is a pattern. Survey data disappears. Access is restricted without detailed justification. Official reports omit findings that their own authors described privately as significant. Heritage legislation is applied in ways that protect the secrecy of what is being protected rather than the material itself. The Nullarbor is the least visited large landmass in Australia. That is precisely why it is the right place to ask these questions. Nobody is watching, nobody is counting, and what lies beneath 2,000 kilometres of flat white limestone has barely been examined with serious scientific intent, despite sitting beneath a continent inhabited for at least 65,000 years. Australia's ancient history is longer and more complex than the official archaeological record reflects. The sites beneath the Nullarbor may represent natural geological curiosities. They may represent something else entirely. But you cannot determine which is true if data disappears, access is sealed, and questions are met with silence. We must stop being comfortable with that silence. Should these sites be opened to independent archaeological investigation with full public disclosure? Should Australian heritage authorities be required to justify every sealing order they issue? Write your answer in the comments below. This community values honest analysis over comfortable certainty. Until next time, stay curious, stay deeply critical,